This is time to discuss Azure Firewall Manager. We all understand when the need evolves, you can implement more and more firewall instances. Each should have similar rule governing traffic flows. Management become more difficult when you have more complex virtual network, virtual WAN, and firewall settings. Firewall Manager basically helps you to centralize and define network and application level rule for traffic filtering across multiple Azure Firewall instances that can span across different Azure regions and subscription. The major benefit you are going to get out of Azure Firewall is going to be the scalability, consistency, centralized management, cross-region and subscription support, traffic governance, and perimeter protection. In my previous lecture, we have already seen these Azure firewalls. It works for standalone VNets. However, there are architectures supported by the firewalls. So the first architecture is going to be a hub virtual network. It means you are going to have a hub where you are going to install a firewall, and then there are going to be the spokes. Those are going to have some sort of the pairing with this hub. So all the traffic which comes from the spoke, or maybe it is intended to go for the internet, everything will be controlled by the firewall, which is part of the hub. The second architecture is basically a virtual WAN architecture. It is a managed service. So this is, you can call it secured virtual hub. So the technical term for the first one is going to be the hub virtual network, and the second one is going to be the secured virtual hub. So the question which should come in your mind, which one I should use? If I take an example of the first example, it means you need to create this hub VNet manually, and then you are going to set up these spokes and then pairing. Everything is just going to be the manual efforts. In the second scenario, if you go for these virtual WAN, that means it is going to be the virtual WAN managed services, and inside that you are going to have a lot of flexibility. You can create routing tables, you can create UDRs, and you can also set up these automated spoke to hub pairings. Top of that, it also gives you the connectivity to the SD-WAN, and then you can connect with your third-party firewalls as well. So a lot of flexibilities are here. It all depends what is the type of environment you are supporting, but the basic requirement remains same. If you have multiple firewalls, means multiple hubs, then this firewall manager is going to help you in a big way. Our lab topology remains same. So this firewall is already deployed. I'm going to show you how it looks like from your firewall manager. Then we are going to add another VNet and do this pairing and see from the manager how it looks like. So I'm logging to the portal, and from here you can see this is the overview tab. And the first thing you will notice what it tells you, you can migrate to the firewall policy. Second thing, if I go to the classic, you can see this firewall can be managed by Azure Firewall Manager. So let's just go back and see how it looks like from the manager. So if I click here to the manager tab, so inside Azure Firewall Manager, there are two options we see. First of all, this is an individual firewall which is deployed for the VNet. So if I see the deployment type, those architecture I talked about, the first architecture is going to be the virtual network. And we see this is the virtual network, which is basically protected by rules. So we have firewall deployed here. The rest of the VNets, I do not have any deployment for the firewall. That is the reason you see no firewall deployed. Similarly, you can go for virtual hubs. I do not have any virtual hub as of now, hence you're not going to see any deployment. So I will go back to the virtual network, And let's create one more VNet, which is, I will name it something like that, firewall VNet 1 or something. And then I'm going to pair that VNet with this VNet, and we'll see how this view changes. I already created additional VNet, which is FW VNet 1, and this VNet is paired with our old VNet, which was FW VNet. Now, if I go back to the same screen and look for virtual networks, then you can see this VNet, it was managed by the rules. And same time, we see now this new VNet, which is attached to this VNet, is paired to a virtual hub. That means this new VNet can also be protected by this firewall, which is part of the old VNet. Rest of the VNets, we still see no firewall deployed. If you're going to connect all these VNets paired with this VNet, then you are going to see the same status. Now let's migrate it to the firewall policy. Tag, if you want to name it something, or else we'll go ahead and create, which will migrate all these rules to a firewall policy. And we will examine what happens when you do this. I will pause the video and let this get completed. The deployment for the policy is completed, and this is the policy. We had multiple rules created while doing a RDP from internet and a rule which allows outbound traffic. So this was a DNAT rule, this is the app out. So under the collection, you can see all the rules. Individually, you can also go to those tabs and see those rules as well. Then you have a network rule. We had nothing inside. Application rule, which basically gives you ability to reach out to the internet. And now you see rest of the other options also threat intelligence, TLS inspection, IDPS, and all those things. I had also created one more policy, which is this policy, in out. It means internet out, and I just allowed everything. So now if you see, there is nothing exist with an association to the VNet. What I did basically, I had chosen this policy and went to here and did the remove VNet association. Once you do it, this de-association, that means the firewall which you had implemented, that will be gone as well. Technically, one firewall will have one policy. It's not like that you created multiple policy and keep adding it. That will not happen. Since you do not see any association here, that means there shouldn't be any firewall. So let's just test the firewall and we see nothing is there. Now, if you want to turn on any firewall, you can do it from here also. So for example, you have this, then you can go for associate hub if you have secured hub. If you want to make it part of the VNet, then you can basically do a association to that VNet as well. Similarly, if you go to the firewall implementation, so for example, if I go here and create new firewall, in the new firewall, these policies can be reused. So if I want to implement, for example, the standard, well, let's try to rebuild it. So I will go to the firewall and the name was firewall was test. It was here, availability June. I will choose all the Junes. SKU standard. And we will manage this. I'm sorry for that. We'll manage this from the firewall policy, not from the classic rules. So the policy I need to choose the policy which I want to implement. So let's take example this time for in-out policy. That means simply the internet out. I need to choose the virtual network. So the virtual network, I will use the existing one because just going to replicate what we had earlier. This firewall was part of this virtual network. The public IP, I will name it firewall 2. This was the first one. Tag, I will leave as it is, and I will create this by hitting the review and create. Let's create it. Now it is doing the deployment, so I will pause this video, and once this deployment is completed, we'll resume it. So that particular deployment is in progress. In between, let's talk about the other option, which is the virtual hub. So if you want to deploy your firewall to the virtual hub, you can basically come here, click on the virtual hubs, and create new secured virtual hub. So here what you need to do, you need to choose a resource group as it is. So let's take example, if I have, I'll give it as it is. And then choose a region where you want to deploy it. And you need to put a name of the virtual hub. So I will just say first hub or something. Then you need to give a specify a range for your hub. So let's choose as it is, or maybe I will go for 10.30.0.0/16. It is asking choose an existing VLAN or create a new one. So we want to create a new one because it doesn't exist. Standard. And now when you go to the firewall, basically you'll have the same options. You can choose availability zone and then specify the address space for the public IP address, or it is asking specify number of public IP address you want to use. Azure recommends configuring 2 to 5. So last time you had seen those two were added one by one, so you can just simply mention it. As I mentioned, this is going to be the managed services, so you don't need to do many things manually. The Azure will take care of rest of the things. And now it is asking default policy. Which policy you want to use? Default deny. If you want to use default deny, which comes by default, or you can choose the policy what you basically created. So since I'm not going to complete this, I just want to show you the options what you have. So you can go for the same thing. So it will be applying the same rules what we had seen earlier. Then I talked about you can also do a integration to the third party. So you have integration for the Zscaler, Checkpoint, and iBoss. Simply then you can go and review and create. It is going to create a secured virtual hub for you. Now the deployment has been completed for the firewall. Let's just go back and see whether you see the firewall. So we see this firewall again. There should be one public IP at this moment. That is exactly what you see. So now you can see the rule which is attached. Now we see in out rule is attached to this particular VNet and the subnet, or you can say to the firewall. If you do the deassociation, then this firewall will go away. So keep that in mind while you play with these rules and the policies. Another thing I wanted to show you, let me explain again. If you go to the policy, you see these things, TNS, threat intelligence, TLS, and all those things. This is a single policy from where you can manage your standard and the premium SKU. So how we can manage it? We had only one SKU, which is a standard one. So let's see what happens when you do the upgrade. So if I go to this firewall, you have option change SKU as well. So from here you can upgrade this to basically your premium SKU. So I will choose premium, and once let's do the upgrade. And while you're doing the upgrade, make sure you're doing in a maintenance window because it can also interrupt your flowing traffic. So let's try to see whether you get the rest of the options under the firewall this time. Now the upgrade from standard SKU to the premium has been done, which you can see this is the current SKU. What if I want to basically downgrade back to the standard one? So let's try these options and see how we can do it. So change SKU. If I go to the change SKU, what it tells you, a premium firewall with the premium policy cannot be downgraded to the standard firewall. Either replace premium policy with the standard or deattach it from the firewall. So you cannot directly do it from here. What you need to do, you can go to this policy and go to the change. Before I go to this, let's understand this. We had this policy in and out. When we upgraded this to the premium SKU, the policy name got changed because there's a different policy for this one. So it is in out premium. Now, if I want to downgrade back, so I will choose the same policy and will save it. It should take a minute at least. So let me pause this video, and once this is completed, we'll resume it. And now you can see the policy has been changed because this is updated associations. Now let's try to do the downgrade again. And now we have these options available. You can go for the standard, or if you want to continue to use the premium one, then change this policy to the premium policy. Now let's take a look on the premium policy. The other options are available. So if I go to the policy, and this policy will be there until you delete it. So you can see the options. Now you can configure the threat intelligence. You can also configure the TLS inspection, IDPS options, and you can also do private IP range SNET. So all these features are available when you use the premium SKU. The only difference comes whatever the VM which is running in the backend that will be upgraded. It will have the high performance capacity and all those things. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next section.